Today's guest, Anupama Murali, is an ICF certified coach, and among her many accomplishments, she is the founder of Forward Focus, a Singapore based organization with the singular purpose of empowering people to be the best version of themselves through coaching and training, self development workshops for individuals and organizations. Her focus is on guiding anyone who wants to break free from their current existence and build something better and more fulfilling for themselves. One might say she's dedicated to making people truly unstoppable. Welcome to the show, Anupama.
Thank you, Shailja. It's lovely to see you. Lovely to meet you after a long time.
So, could you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
I think I'm someone who basically really enjoys exploring myself, and my professional work was into IT consulting. And I remember during those 15 years doing variety of roles. So I've always been open to sort of explore new roles, new countries. And right now, I think it's about also doing things in a very different way. So versatility and newness is something that I really enjoy exploring. So that's a little bit about me. What do I do? I'm a life and executive coach. I'm also a speaker. And why I do what I do, very simply put, is because I really want to stay inspired myself. So I think by staying inspired, I have an opportunity to inspire others.
Lovely, lovely. And I've seen you always, very motivated, high of energy, and also at the same time learning new skills. So that's how I always remember Anupama. That anything new happening in the neighborhood, Anupama will be the first person, who will be, hey, I want to do this. I want to be part of this. So it's really encouraging. But tell me, in your mind, what are some of the challenges faced by women, both professionally and personally?
So Shelja, I'll talk about even, my own self, right? Today I do what I do because of my own story as well. I used to hesitate to put up my hands. You were just saying that there's something new, then Anupama would be there. But that's not how I was at all. Although I was always open to exploring new areas, I felt that that was just because I had to do it. It was just life events which took me from one to another. And I always felt like, not someone who would put up her hand to speak or like say, okay, I can do this. And quite sort of unsure about myself for a very long time. So I think that is one of the biggest challenges women go through because we think that unless we do everything perfectly, we are not yet ready. And when I transcended that and came to a point where, yes, I can always do so much more, but where I am today, I can do something as well. So it's really owning what I know, which has changed the way I have started approaching my life. So back to your question, it is that not being sure about whether to take up things because you don't believe that what you know is good enough. I think that's one of the main challenges women go through.
And personally, have you gone through any challenges and how do you overcome them?
So for me, I think the awakening came when I started noticing that there were times in my day when I felt very cheerful and happy, and there were times in the same day when I wasn't. So I was going through this up and down of energy. And when I was having, not very energetic moments, I just was a different person. I was more frustrated. I didn't have the, patience to persist and so on. But that really got me curious to say, hey, but I also am the same person who has these moments of being enthusiastic and so effective at work. So there must be something here which can keep me in that zone more and more. So that curiosity led me to want to figure out how to adjust my own energy. And for me, the life changing moment was when I actually learned how to meditate. And rather, I would say not learned how to meditate, started loving meditation. I learned how to meditate, but not until I started loving meditation did the transformation happen in me. So I was curious about how I could make my day more consistent, and my personal story is about really working on myself. Other than meditation, I also basically really am very open to being self-aware, and self influencing myself. So I'm happy to sort of take criticism. I'm always ready to say, okay, what can I do better? So rather than, I always tell my friends saying, rather than telling me this is great, tell me what I could have done better or what would have made it more useful for you. And that has also helped me, keep refining myself. And it's a journey. So not even talking about, getting anywhere, but really enjoying the process.
It is fantastic, huh? I mean, you've actually flipped the criticism into a mechanism to actually grow. So which really takes a lot in terms of maturity. One has to be very mature to take that route towards life and self growth. So clearly, what you're saying, spirituality has played a major role, right, in your transformation journey.
True, true. So as I mentioned, it started with this question of what is making me not be consistent in the day, to actually experimenting with few things, finding something which works best for me, which is a breath based meditation. And then the curiosity just expanded, saying, wow, if this is what this can do for me, then there is no limit. So I got really curious about mindset and how the brain works and how can we really sort of keep that positivity. And I would say consistency and stability is what I'm talking about. It's not that there are never any moments of me going, flying off the handle, but how soon do I come back, and what do I learn from that process? So that's been something that keeps me inspired, I would say.
So one is being self-inspired, right? But you've also done a lot of things for the community. I think you have done courses and workshops and non-profit organizations you've been, associated with. So taking that vision ahead, whether through your own professional, corporate training jobs, which you're doing, right? It's called Achieve with Equilibrium. I think that caught my attention somewhere when I read that. So that zeal of not only doing things for yourself but also doing it for everybody around, right? I think that's also, I've seen something very peculiar about you. So whatever you learned, you want to give it back, whether through your work or through your non-profit association with organizations, and you have managed to put people together and keep them together for a while now. I think I've seen people working along with you, imbibing your vision. So how do you do that? How do you get people, inspire them, and keep them going?
So, back to that line that really inspires me, achieve with equilibrium. So, equilibrium here is about the state of mind. And through my life experience, I realized that when we are in equilibrium, which is having a balance of emotions, having that clarity in the mind, and enthusiasm for action. So these are the three power words for me: clarity, stability, and enthusiasm. We are in a state of equilibrium, and that is when we function best. And when we function best, Shailaja, we are just able to self inspire, of course, and that vibration is also passed to others. So, one of the quotes that has now really sort of become part of me is being centered while staying inspired. Stay inspired. At the same time, be centered. It's okay, be patient, take everything as a learning process, enjoy that as well, because, the half the fun of any trip is actually the act of getting there, right? So, that is what I believe in, and I truly sort of execute all my roles like that. Another thing I do, as you know, is music with my daughter as well. So I'm still very passionate about learning, and I have started doing mashups with her. Why do I do that? Simply because I want to leave a memory for her that my mom started listening to English music when she turned 40, and she did some English music with me. And coming back to criticism, she's my best critic. She said, "Mom, please don't sing. You sound terrible. Your accent is so poor." And I told her that, Ananya, you can be my voice, my vocal coach and my diction coach. But in this lifetime, I will do it. And you will do this with me. So even not taking her opinions to shake me. And I think that's the way I, do everything I do. So I really have found that it's not the way I was. But once I shifted, I find, wow, the sky is the limit, right? If you can take criticism and learn from there, you find that avenue to, finesse and change.
So very interesting, huh? So you're growing because you're open to feedback And I think that's also is a sign that, we tend to protect our identities, right, so dearly to us, that okay, I am this, and I have achieved so much in life, and I should get that respect, and there is this entire very concrete jungle we've created around ourselves. And somewhere when we thought of or conceptualized unstoppable women, it was all about, women carry all these identities, right, all their life, but somewhere they also sacrifice their dreams or what they really want to do, right, their mojo, that one thing which can really become their ikigai, that gets sacrificed. So I think listening to you, I can clearly see, how you've kept your ikigai alive, through channelizing that positive energy by just accepting criticism and taking that as a road to self growth. That's fabulous. I have so much to learn from you, Anupama. And I'm sure our listeners would really, really enjoy listening more.
You're no less inspiring. I find your work is so interesting, and you also continue to sort of explore new avenues. But I do want to share one thing that you mentioned, right? That sacrifice. So throughout my career, I kept following my husband, not because anybody asked me to. That was my choice. And I remember during my 15 years in TCS, I used to keep applying for transfers because my husband would keep moving. And I would always go to my manager and say that I want to go to this city now or this country now. And I used to be open to say, give me anything. So I never said, oh, I have 10 years of project management. I want shift now. So I was very open. So that got me into consulting. I was okay to do software development. I also did software quality management. And then now I'm doing something very different. So, what I want to share is that as women, we always need to make those choices in our life. But if we don't see it as a sacrifice, it's a choice I'm making because I want to do it. Somehow we get the power to then change that in a way that will operate for us as well. Now, I just do what I like doing. I spend a lot of time doing my work. And now at my home, in fact, it's very funny. They would step out for an evening walk or a run, but they would know that I will just be inside coaching, right? They've given me my space. I made a lot of choices which I would never call as a sacrifice. I made those conscious choices which helped me bring a certain balance in my life. And then when I decided to pursue whatever I wanted to, I was sure about that as well. So I think this is something women can really sort of look at to say, don't even use the word sacrifice. It's a choice you're making because you are an integral part of the family, and your choice, it matters to the family so much. And you're actually supporting the family at that time. Sacrifice is like, oh, poor me. I wish I had done that. I've never felt that way. In fact, I put in my papers for TCS after I got my big promotion, and everybody was like, how can you do this? But I said, right now, I just have to do this. My daughter is 4.5, and it just is not making sense for me to have a regional role. So that's how it was. I was very clear about it. And I think that helped me to continue taking my skills into whatever I did, right? Skills continue to be there. It's just that where we use it changes.
Right. So choosing what really matters and being proud of it, proud of your choice, right? Or your choices in life.
Choosing what matters and owning your choice.
Owning your choice. And also this entire narrative, right? The self narrative which we build to ourselves that, oh, I have to do this because like you said that your husband was moving from country to country. But I think you've also seen always the silver lining around the cloud, right? Because your self awareness was so high, being on a spiritual path, maybe that's sort of helped you navigate this. But what about women who possibly don't have that spiritual calling yet, and there's still that promotion would matter to them, or letting go of that position would matter to them or bother them? So, what message do you have for those women?
So it's simple, right? Coming back to the what I said is that make the choice that matters most. Now, if you're going to make a choice which is going to keep you unhappy, it's of no value to others. So if you choose that this promotion matters to me, I want to continue pursuing, say that and get their support and do it together as a cohesive unit. In my case, I chose that I don't want to go on that path. And I was very clear about it. So I wasn't really causing any confusion at home, right? So again, it's back to think through what would really add value to me and others around me at this point in time. So look at it as a cohesive unit rather than them and me. I would do this for my family, but I wouldn't want to do it myself. That won't work for too long. Because I do coach women who basically have made some choices and now they are struggling to sort of get back. And there's this, a little bit of frustration saying, I made these choices because I had to. And I think that doesn't allow us to really, be our best version, I would say. So, two things: you think through what choice you want to make. And once you made that choice, you own it. When you own a choice, you are so empowered that everything starts to change around you. You can always go back to what you wish to do later. So, that's what I would say.
So, tell us the genesis of Forward Focus. Was there always in the back of your mind that you would get into coaching and that's your true calling, or it just evolved? Like you said, you also your life has been an unfolding, unveiling of a lot of things, which just makes sense now on the hindsight. But was there anything which was right in the beginning, from the beginning, that okay, coaching is my final goal or one of the goals?
So interestingly, when I started, sharing more about what I do as a coach, a lot of my TCS colleagues came back and they reconnected with me. And interestingly, they said, "Oh, this is not something new. You always had this quality." At that time, it was not called coaching. Perhaps I worked with them. And I think I always have enjoyed having conversations and, inspiring people and also staying inspired. So at work, I was this really enthusiastic, wonderful, personality. And at sometimes outside of work, I wasn't feeling that way. That's where, the clash, I wanted to resolve that and be more consistent, right? So going back to my workplace experience, I always felt that I enjoyed having conversations with clients also and my colleagues also. So later, when I moved out of my corporate role, I completely went into a voluntary role. For 5 years, I was just teaching breath based meditation programs because I'd gained so much from it. And I found that there as well, I enjoyed interacting with people one on one. And the second thing is training. This time the concept was different. I was actually training people on mindfulness and meditation. Previously in my corporate role, it was software processes. So for me, I was using the same skills here as well. And then, as you mentioned, one thing led to another. And I was like, okay, how do I really make this something that I can do more consistently and reach more people? And that's when coaching really appeared in front of me. And, long story short, I just went with the flow. It's as if it was calling out to me and I just went with it.
Interesting, because it's always been there, like what you're saying, right? So your personality was always underneath of it. It just was unveiling and unfolding, like I said earlier, right? So it's pretty much.
And it continues to as well.
But you touched upon your meditation, breath work, and the techniques which you teach. And you said that those was so powerful that motivated you to volunteer for 5 years. Can you talk a little bit about these techniques and how they help people?
Right. So, firstly, I was, the experiment, it was on myself, right? So I found that things that were not easy for me to manage got easier. And my life situation had not changed. In fact, it gotten more complex because I had a baby and then we moved to another country. In fact, life situation was even more complex. However, there was something different in the way I was approaching the situation or I was feeling on a daily basis. Now, that really was something I wanted to share with people because I had been through the contrast as well. And I felt if only more people could actually be more centered as much as they can be very different everywhere. So it goes beyond work, Shailja. It's just the whole personality, how it comes together. So, because of the impact it had on me, I just wanted to share it with as many people. And I believe the best way to share is to teach it because when you teach, you're also learning. So for me, it's also a learning process. Every time I teach, I meet a new group of people. Of course, they are learning, but I'm learning too because different perspectives, talking to different people allows me to also absorb the knowledge even more. So the programs I teach have two components. One is the breath based meditation, the other is the mind management nuggets. So the mind management nuggets can be best understood when you implement them. So I allow myself to also be a student, I would say, allowing myself to absorb. And when I do that more and more, I'm even more convinced to continue what I'm doing.
Would you continue doing that along with your coaching? Do you get time to volunteer?
Absolutely. So, making a difference in terms of sharing these programs with corporate homes and as well as the public is something that I'll continue to do. I'm also very passionate to share this with youth. So, I do a lot of youth programs where we are introducing these things as young as 8 years old. So, you can imagine the power, right? If they know how to do this when they're very young, they know how to manage their emotions, they'll be so much more resilient and agile as they grow to be adults.
So, talking about youth, I really want you to give a message to the young adults out there. Right, during pandemic, it's not been easy for anyone. Well, I mean, any tips for them how to manage their mental health at this point in time? And I know personally that I've seen you working very closely with youth, on youth programs, spending time with youth.
Yes, when I speak at youth events or I actually teach these programs, I see that, youth today are already ready to start talking and listening about resilience, agility, and also mental wellness. They are already ready. So when I speak to them, I'm quite amazed to see the questions they ask. They're very, very aware. They're aware that they're going through fear of missing out. They can understand why they are not able to make the right choices and so on. So the message to youth is self awareness can really help you make better choices. So, whatever may be happening in your life, understanding what is making you follow a pattern or what is making you not overcome a habit will help you make the right choices. And believe that you can be guided by someone. So, youth should actually open up to talk to mentors. If they are not comfortable talking about these matters at home or even with their friends, look out for mentors you can speak to. And just speaking about the challenges you have can really help you see it from a different perspective. So I also do youth coaching, and this is where I've got these insights that when they speak to a coach, they're able to sort of present this with, not worry of any judgment. And that itself helps them to see that thing in a different way. So simple thing like using of gadgets. When parents are going to tell them, they're fighting back, saying, "Oh, I need to do this, and this is the most important thing for me." But when they speak to me as a coachee or a client, they're able to share what is making them do that, and they're willing to see what steps they can take because they're aware of the consequences. So I think with youth, we need to believe that they are capable of understanding if only we are willing to listen.
Very interesting. Do you think meditation would work for youth as well? I mean, we always think that meditation is for people who've lived a certain age and, then it's easy to get into meditation. Would you suggest meditation for youth, young adults, even children for that matter, and especially during the pandemic time?
Yes, yes. So the work I do as a youth facilitator for breath based meditation is all around introducing breath work to children and teens. Now, breath is more tangible than the mind. So instead of telling them, close your eyes and meditate, we do some specific breath work with them. And that allows them to calm down. So with my own 11-year-old, even yesterday, she was very upset with something and she was kicking me, literally. Like that's not the disagreement she was physically showing me. And all I did with her was some breath work, some different things that we did together with the breath. I said, okay, it's fine. I know you're upset, but we're going to just do this for a few more seconds. And suddenly she started laughing because she felt, oh, I no longer see a need to protest with my mom. So, back to your question, it is so beautiful because you can really see their behavior change. However, we can't as adults just tell them to do it. If you want your children to adopt these things, I would really recommend people to also adopt it themselves. Because the truth is, your children may not listen to you, but they surely follow you. So if you want them to adopt breath based meditation or breath work to change their emotions, please bring it into your own life.
So while taking care of children and the family and the community, women is playing a lot of roles.
Hmm.
How should she still have her own identity? And there are many parts in the world where for whatever reason, women still get locked in that the various identities and the roles she has to play. And the reason why we started this series was also to inspire women who are already living an unstoppable life, and also the ones who are still feeling little, kind of camouflaged under the roles and identities. So, any message to those women who are still feeling the burden of roles which they are playing? How to come out of it and have some your own space under the sun?
So again, I would go back to owning choices. I'm not saying anything different here because I'm really sort of connecting back to how things have evolved for me. And I've also observed things have changed for many women as well. Owning your choice. So the more you're able to own your choice, you're not in that mindset to say, I am doing this because I have to. I am doing that because I don't have a choice. But when you make a choice saying, I'm doing this because it is my choice to take care of my family at this point in time, that is very empowering. So if you choose, I'm making this choice because my career is important, that is also your choice. Just own that. Because sometimes women make a career choice, but there is a guilt which is running all the time. Why? Because they have not owned that choice. So if you own your choice, you neither have regret or guilt. So, how do you own your choice is to really ask yourself some very important questions saying, what makes me want to choose this? What is at the heart of this for me? And what would it look like if I didn't do this? And you have to make that choice to say, am I okay with that? Because you have to be okay with that yourself. So I hope that's useful. It's about owning choices, asking some questions, speaking to mentors and coaches. It's a beautiful way to have these things clear in your mind. The more we are clear, and that is what I do as a coach, which is achieve with equilibrium, is when we have clarity in the mind, balance in our emotions, enthusiasm for action will come on its own, and we are able to affect the world around us and not be affected by it.
Lovely, Anupama. So, while we are in the state of equilibrium, which is very good because it gives us a very clear perspective towards our actions and the choices which we make. What about times of adversities? The true test of all our emotions, integrity, values, everything kind of shakes up when adversities strike. So, how do you manage those moments in life?
So equilibrium again has to get shaken up, right? And that's the fun. If it's so stagnant, there is no fun. So like COVID came and my world as well changed. Everything had to change. And I had some plans in 2020 which no longer could happen. I could not do things the way I wanted to do it. But at that point in time is the point where you will notice that your emotions are not stable, you're unclear again. So you have to go back to the drawing board. What can I do now to bring clarity? And that clarity will power you towards stability. A lot of people and situations will keep shaking you. But again and again, finding that balance where you can stand straight and strong will give you the opportunity to tackle any situation. So I would say welcome it because otherwise stagnant is not really fun. So it's okay. It's going to be part of life. So in fact, when I speak to youth, I always say that uncertainty is certain. That's how it is. So the fact that equilibrium is not a state once you reach, you'll never get out of it. The moment something changes, again you're back to being unclear and unstable. And that is the moment you need to pick up that trigger and see what you can do differently to come back to that state when you can function at your best.
So, equilibrium would give you clarity of mind to make the right choices, and those right choices would inevitably make you unstoppable in life, right? Because
That's right.
then you keep bouncing back with a lot of rigor, enthusiasm, and that's how we see Anupama. That's how I think I've defined you in my head. That it's been such an inspiring journey. When I was in Singapore, I was truly inspired with the kind of work which you did as a volunteer, as a teacher, as a co-teacher. yeah, it was so inspiring that out of, I don't know, 100 teachers or 200 of us,
Yeah, I
yeah,
think
you
we
did.
have 100, yes.
Yeah, I think your scores were really used to be always up in terms of number of courses and number of volunteers, and I was like, wow, how does she do this? And now I know the secret recipe. So, but it's been great having you on the show, Anupama. Thanks so much. And I think all your life learnings are going to help many more listeners out there today on the show. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shailja. So I would like to close with the same thing, right? It's not about a scorecard. It's not about hitting a target. It's about being centered while staying inspired. Then you'll find that not only are you able to get to your goals, the journey to the goal is enjoyable as well.
Thanks for tuning in. Join us again next week for more inspirational stories from unstoppable women.